Hey there, what's up, y'all? Welcome back to Carpo's channel. Still voted the worst YouTube channel 37 years in a row. Thank you all for the ratings, appreciate it. And today I'd like to talk a little bit about what's worth getting pissed off about and what's worth arguing about, but it's not really in the sense of anything specific that is worthy. More of the general idea of driving ourselves insane by exposing ourselves to the media circus, as well as the anger and angst that is coming out within people recently. And I know that a lot of this inner frustration was always there. To put it simply, and without going into too much detail, when things are going well for us and everything's flowing smoothly, we generally do fine. We go to work, we come home, we do our routines, and we don't have a lot of time to, or a lot of reason to complain. We all had a lot of time to sit around over the last few months. At least, a lot of people did. But not sit around maybe in the sense of, I mean, there are plenty of people still working through, the pandemic. But everything got quiet for a little while, and we had time to think. And in this time, there's been a lot of frustration and fear that's come out. And in the idea that we've made enemies out of one another. So, actually, how I wanted to start this video and how I might title it is something along the lines of, to gain your sanity back, the easiest way is to turn off the TV, put your phone down, and turn on some music. Now, even if you're not a music person, maybe you don't like music at all, fine. Find something else, maybe a hobby. But a majority of people I've met have some music they like. On those mornings where I wake up and put on music, everything's fine and I get motivated. So the question I guess that I'm going to ask, not just for you or for anyone else or them or they, but us, me, we all do this. We immerse ourselves in what's going on in the world. Now, there are a couple of reasons for this. One, we want to be aware and educated about what's going on in our environment. I mean, that's a pretty common reason to want to be informed. If somebody brings up a war going on and you're not even aware that we're at war, which could be actually pretty common in America, but if you're completely oblivious to the world events, then you'll not be a very good conversationalist, because those are the common threads we have. Very similar to the way that some people really like certain movies or shows, and it gives them a place to go and to chat and to get together and to talk about these things. But now, these groups who are all interested in different things have spent, it seems, more time immersing themselves in the other side in order to ridicule, to insult, to try to belittle the other groups or the other people. And there's a big difference between that kind of trolling attitude, and those who just bring up subjects. For example, anytime I bring up something political, somebody's going to get upset, right? Maybe not upset, but somebody's going to disagree with what I have to say, because that's where we're at. There's nothing wrong with that. But instantly, when you say the wrong thing, you become labeled the enemy. This whole idea of treading lightly in what we say. I mean, we all do it in our daily life. Even people who say they'd say anything. I'm like, there are limits to even what any, individual person is willing to say. They don't want to look like an asshole. It's the same reason I don't cuss all the time. And fuck, I did when I was younger. I cussed all the time, and I still do in my daily life. But I try not to very much in videos, because I feel it to be, just, there's no point to it. But anyhow, a lot of folks, they really are very vulgar people. There are some very vulgar and rude and crude people. Regardless of the psychology or the reason behind it, whatever happened to them when they were kids, their personal situation, there are some assholes out there. And because of them, like I said, if I have a certain opinion on a subject and somebody doesn't like it, instead of saying, well, I disagree, they'll instantly say, you're a hater, you hate this, you hate that. It's like, wait a minute. I thought about this quite a bit. I thought, why do I immerse myself in things? And why do I comment, for example, on something where I disagree? Why not just walk away and let people believe what they believe? 90% of the time I do. The only time, and I had to think about this, to ask what are my intentions of, say, even tweeting, responding to a tweet or a comment on a random video. When I see someone saying something that I believe could be harmful to society or other individuals in that society, I feel like I have to speak. Like if somebody just says, we have to just kill all the Democrats. Like, yeah, I could walk away from that, but, that is appalling and it's disgusting and it's un-American. But somebody could say something about the other side just as well. It's not us and them, it's us and us. And I don't want to get into that side of it, but it's not that I hate anyone. I have empathy for everyone, but I want accountability for those who cause harm to others. It's really that simple. And I guess that's why all of us should have an opinion on what's going on. If there's a genocide happening in your country, for example, I don't want to get into that, but and you just ignore it and don't do anything about it or have an opinion, then a lot of folks would say you're part of the problem. That by not vocalizing that you're just adding to the hate, that you're fueling the hate. And sometimes that's true if there's something you can do about it, but often people don't say anything because they're afraid of having their lives taken, for one. In a lot of countries you say the wrong thing and you will be cut down. But in America we do have the right to say what we want. And I do have the right to say pretty much anything I feel in my heart. And so back to the idea of why and how much is worth it. What is worth fighting about? And I'll tell you this. I've always been an argumentative person. I was a teenager once. I was an arrogant teenager that thought I knew everything. As to how bad I was, I don't know, because I wasn't me. But I was just more of a dork. But the more people I met in life that I felt were cheating others or stealing or lying, and I started to say, okay, society looks down on these people. So why can't we look up to people who are of good value and good judgment and character? And I want to be one of those people because I don't want to ever think in my own heart that I've harmed someone else. And so, yeah, maybe I'm a soft-hearted liberal, if you want to call me that, or a tree hugger, or any of those things. But I'm not politically interested in those things any more than the fact that I feel like I have to speak about certain topics, or else somebody else will fill that void with nonsense, some sort of a conspiracy or bullshit. Everyone's entitled to their opinion, but sometimes we need a voice of reason. That sounds arrogant. For me to say I'm the voice of reason, maybe sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not. I've had people tear into me when I make a comment about the economy or this or that. Sometimes I come out of it saying, well, thanks, I wasn't aware of that and I actually learned something here. I don't know everything. But now I'm going to move on into, I guess, the point of the video, which is, why don't we just consistently ignore all of it, And I guess it goes back to what I said about feeling like we are obligated to our society, obligated to our neighbors, kind of like speaking up for somebody who is the less or the more vulnerable people in our society. And that's very difficult these days because there are so many labels and there's so much hatred. I firmly believe that most people are good and mean well and are kind-hearted. In fact, my brother and I were just texting back and forth because in his job, he collects barn owl pellets, so he drives from barn to barn. And he was talking about how a couple of the homeowners, people seem a little more suspicious right now about him driving up. They wonder, is this Antifa coming to my farm? And, he's talked to some farmers about these things, and they do believe this. The idea that Antifa would drive out to some farm in a random place, and that's got to be scary for them. I'm not pointing the finger and saying, oh, look at this idiot. I'm saying this is sad because people are fearing things that aren't even really there. We've created ghosts. We've created this illusion of enemies where they don't exist. And while it's fascinating, sometimes you also have to step away. And so it's kind of like, I found in my life, I go through phases, even during times of the year, but also during just day to day, within the day. One part of the day I might feel like it's worth a debate. Later on, it's just like, why even bother? Or, one part of the week I might be more motivated to write about certain political topics. And then for the next week I say, oh, I'm not even going to look into politics ever again. I don't care. And I told myself a week ago that I'm just not going to read any news until after the election. That's bullshit. Of course I am. I'm not obsessed with it, but I like to know what's going on so I can hold a discussion about it. But that kind of brings me to the another point, I guess, is it worth it anymore? I don't feel like discussions are really going anywhere for the most part. I've found myself finding myself biased to my own awareness or my own knowledge, my version of the information that I have, just like everyone else is. And I try hard to break that bias and to be honest with myself and with others. So hopefully that comes through. You know, sometimes people, I mean, I've been accused of a few things in my life that I just don't agree and won't admit to. But I like to analyze my own personality and say, why do I do this? And why do I talk about this or that? But also, what in my life is really that important to talk about? There have been times on my channel where all I wanted to do was just talk about something completely neutral, like walking in the woods or nature. And then I think, you know, if I have a voice, why don't I use it at least somewhat to express my opinions? And I always have. It's not like it's a new thing. Somebody said, you know, a while back, like, oh, I liked your channel better before you talked about politics. And I said, so did I. But really, that didn't happen. You know, back, I've been talking about that shit since like 2011 or 12. Back then, I was posting a lot of stuff about conspiracies, about the end of the world. I was a big, you know, into prepping. You know, having dried food and everything, a bug out bag and all these things. And I don't know, I've been really looking back on my life and asking myself, when have I been the happiest? No, I'm a lucky guy. I have a wife that loves me and 3 boys that love me. At least my mom's still around. My dad passed when I was a teenager, but even having one parent, you should be very grateful for that, because some people have none. And my brother lives out in Hood River, and I've got a few good friends that I don't see very often these days, but that'll hopefully change. And I'm very grateful for that, you know. And the times when I've spent with my family and friends, and the time that I've spent at concerts and enjoying music, you know, sharing experiences with others, those have been the times that I've really cherished the most in my life. And as far as things that I've learned or read about, or tried to understand, it must have been my Zen Buddhist phase that I went through for like 2 years, where I was reading all of these, you know, different passages, and I was also into like Hinduism and the Bhagavad Gita, and but Zen was really where I focused my attention after a while. You know, I listened to a lot of Manly P. Hall, and that kind of led me to Alan Watts, and then I kind of started reading the koans, the Zen koans, which are like little, I don't know, hiccups in life. They're not, you know, morals, they're like conundrums in a way. But those things helped me through my dark times. They helped me to remember that it's the long, full experience of my life that matters the most. You know, being consistent and enjoying yourself throughout, rather than, say, burning out early or getting high on some, you know, a variety of different drugs. Believe me, I had my fun when I was younger, and I did some dumb things. But a light bulb goes off and you say, dude, I gotta get straight, you know. Maybe that's why I get bothered when people call me, you know, a junkie or something, or, you know, whatever. It's obviously not true. But thinking back, I was like, well, I've never been a junkie. I've actually never done heroin, never planned to. But I've done my share of other substances and walked away from it saying, I'm grateful that I'm just a stoner. Then I think, well, I also take kratom. Oh, I drink coffee. Oh, I vape. Oh, man. You can't win, right? I suppose by vaping, that makes it an 18 and older video instantly. That's another thing, is the censorship issue. I don't even know what I can talk about anymore on YouTube or anywhere else, but that's okay. Most of the stuff that I'm interested in sharing, the most important things, are the positive things. So as a conclusion to this video, I guess what I was really trying to say is turn off the TV and turn on the radio at least most of the time. Having news going in the background while you're doing housework or anything like that is a bad idea. Just put some headphones on, listen to some good tunes. I guarantee your mood will completely change, especially if you're focused on all the shit that's going on in the world right now. Because I've seen how it's affecting people. Some people are in full-blown panic mode about this world, the world issues, COVID and everything else, which will eventually go back to, well, we'll never go back to normal, let's just say. And this might decline and get worse and worse. We don't know how bad it is, but humans have a tendency to pull out of shit. There are countries out there that have been in full-on civil war for decades, and they're still functioning, and they still have businesses open. So it's not like we're just going to fall apart overnight. It's possible, but unlikely. But the point I want to make is that, to try not to get brought down by all the bullshit, because there's people who are just sad, depressed, anxious. We're all feeling it. It's even worse since I can't even look out because of the wildfire smoke. It's just disgusting. It's the only smokeless room in the house. But then there's other people who, they get angry about it, and then they take it out on others. They get frustrated. And others who are in complete denial that anything is going on at all. They just want to say, oh, they just want to lock you up, and, the government just wants you to be locked down so you're, subservient to them. And I start thinking, yeah, that's really productive that when people aren't working, and the government's giving away money, it's not exactly helping anyone, them included. But if anything, they want to keep the machine going, obviously. And I think that's one of the things that maybe has frustrated me the most in the last year, half a year or so since this started, is that this machine that we're part of, this, I'm talking the specifically Americans, USA citizens, are part of this capitalist machine which has many broken cogs due to lobbying efforts, unfair, drug price hikes. I had somebody defending pharma the other day, and I was trying to explain that the free market only operates correctly if you allow competition. If you're pushing out the generics and you're extending patents and then you're raising your drug prices 10 times for basic insulin, and people have to give up their groceries for insulin or give up their insulin for groceries, then, we have a problem. And so maybe our nation isn't as great as we thought, but it's still a great nation if you base it on the people. Because as I said, most of the people are good and we care about each other. So letting go of all the bullshit that's going on out there, it's hard, but it's important, I guess. I don't know how long this video is. I should probably just go. It's only 17 minutes. That's not too long. I've done half-hour videos before. I do have a lot to say, but it's hard to just condense it all in one video, but sometimes that's the best way to do it. I'll take a breather, take a drink, stretch my legs and my back. Take another sip of my Rockstar. It's sugar-free, but I like my caffeine sometimes. When I was working, when I was younger, I used to drink a lot of those, and it was bad. Construction makes you just kind of not eat. Working and working and working, fuck your back up, all that stuff. Good times, but... So anyway, I don't want to get too far out of focus. My main point was made that I think it's important to try to get away from it and listen to music, but also it's very difficult when we can't even talk about issues without people getting mad and triggered by any discussion about something. I mean, we have a cult of personality, and I'm not just talking about the president. It's around a system, around the way people act, groups of people act. We see these groups, and especially online, they look more powerful than they really are. Say say you're a lonely guy and you see this group of protesters or Antifa, and you think, oh wow, I could join something and stand for something. Or maybe on the other side, you see one for a local militia that needs a member, and you could join that and just as easily feel like you're a community member. People can go either way. It's not ingrained in our brains to, take a certain position. It's that people want to feel like they belong. So when we bring people into our circle and try to understand them, it is so much better than just arguing and fighting. So to answer my own question at the beginning, what's worth fighting for or arguing about, that is fully dependent on the individual. It's subjective, and it depends on what values you have. But for me, it comes down to when I see others that may be harmed by an action, I can only help but speak up. That's why I've always been anti-war. There's never been an excuse for any of the wars that the U.S. has been in that I've seen. but yet people still defend the military as this necessity for the size it is. And I'm just having a discussion about that. And I thought about this morning. Whenever there's a discussion where you say, oh, the military's overfunded, people say, oh, yes, you need to support the troops. And what I'd like to say to those people is, please stop using United States soldiers as a prop, or rather a blockade to defend your position as if that's impenetrable. There are plenty of soldiers who stand up for protesters and ones who don't. There are ones who are anti-war, ones who are pro-war. There are some really nice people and some really shitty people. Just like anything else, soldiers are just people. And a lot of them who did fight for this country for reasons that maybe weren't that necessary, let's just say that. Those are the things that piss me off, that I feel like I have to speak about. Or the tyranny of the police, because this goes so far beyond, there's a lot of talk about the blue line and protecting police right now. And I'd like to say that I respect police when they're respectable. And there are plenty of great cops out there. But I wrote a paper a few months ago, and it was kind of timely, but right after I wrote it, this whole thing happened, the protest started. And I thought maybe it's just not the right time, because it was not anti-cop. It was a story about what happened up at Ruby Ridge, as well as Waco, which came just right after that. Waco was supposed to make up for the failure of Ruby Ridge. And the whole story is pretty fascinating, but it was a long paper I wrote about the government overstepping their bounds. And it's fascinating to me because there are so many militias in this country. And almost all of them, their fear has always been that the government is going to try to take control and be authoritarian. That has happened in a way. At least a lot of people see it that way. So they started protesting. The minute something started getting burned or destroyed, all of a sudden the militia is out there fighting the people who are fighting the government. I mean, the irony is just beyond me. I've been trying to make sense of this. I understand the concept when businesses are harmed, but not just in general of going out and confronting a bunch of protesters. A lot of them have joined the other side, but the thing is, it's not about wanting chaos, it's about wanting change. I'm not saying I support the actions of these guys. There are plenty of riots going on. People got mad at me for not using the word riot. It was like, well, at a point they do become a riot. I get that. But I'm not siding with those people. I think a lot of them are just destroying shit to destroy shit, but people should know there's a lot of them who are trying to stop others from doing that. Point is that we have utter chaos in a lot of places that has been going on for, 100 days now, 110 days. And the smoke out in the West Coast here really slowed all of that. And maybe it'll pan out and just kind of ease back now. But the point being that I wanted to make was, we often forget that it's not everyone is anti-police. A lot of us speak up because we've seen them abuse their power. We've seen how many tanks they have built into their arsenal, the new weapons, the clothes they wear. A lot of them wear masks, cover their badges, things like that. That is some of the things that I was taught back in my kind of conspiracy phase to look out for. Watch out for covering badge numbers, covering faces, or sending in federal troops without a state wanting them, or even if a state does want them, sending in federal troops for a domestic issue. All these things have happened. And a lot of the people who say that they want less government and less government interference are completely opposed to any type of change. And it's interesting. I'd be curious to hear thoughts on that. As well as any solutions to our current dilemmas, because I'd say we've got a couple things going on that are worth focusing on at least once in a while. The rest of the time, listen to music and have a good time. I mean, it's funny because when I make videos and talk about these things, there are some people who have left comments like, oh, you obsess too much over this or this or this. It's like, no, I really don't. I think about things and I build up ideas in my head and I think, oh, I want to talk about this. So I get it all out in the video. Then I go back to doing magic with my 7-year-old. He's learning how to do magic tricks and he's obsessed with it. I love it. And, I just feel like it's important to speak up because somebody has to, right? So there's COVID that we're dealing with. There's these protests and riots that we're dealing with, and people wanting change in different ways, way beyond police. I mean, full-on government, issues, way beyond Trump. I'm not talking about the president. I'm saying these things are deeply ingrained within our corrupt system right now. I mean, it is a corporate-run nation. They lobby Congress for everything. So that is worth getting pissed about because people are losing their livelihoods. People are not able to even make ends meet when they're working 2 jobs. And to me, that's ridiculous. I know that there are safety nets and programs and Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, all these things, but they continue to get cut and cut and cut. And Americans are just this idea with kick each other in the ass and say, oh, you're just too lazy, get a fucking job. Meanwhile, we see the streets just filling with homeless people, not because they're lazy, but because a lot of people lost their place of residence because their domicile was taken over by a 10 times rent hike that they couldn't stop because of surprise lobbying by the real estate industry or the renting industry or whatever it might be. Those with money have the power. We know this. A vote, whatever. You can vote for things and you should vote, especially locally, and it does matter. But in the end, in order to get anything done, we need all hands on deck. Our government has been fighting amongst themselves for so long that I don't even know if there's any solution to this problem other than a full, what they call raise it and re-raise it, raise it with a Z. Not take down the whole country. You can't do that and wouldn't want to, but rebuild the structure from the ground up and figure it out. What we really want as a nation. Times change, values change, but people, we all still have hearts of gold underneath that armor that we're portraying to the world right now. I'd like to hug some of the people that I've argued with online or, shake their hand and have a cup of coffee. Because as my brother said today, even though he was out there working and a lot of the farmers thought Antifa was coming to their farm, he said once you get to talk to these people, they're actually really cool, nice people. And I said, that's the thing. If you meet people face to face, you'll find that they're rather kind most of the time, or at least reasonably. As I say, there's a percentage of complete shitbags out there that can't be denied, but that's something we just have to live with. If we let those few define all of them, then we've already failed. Just like if we let a few bad cops define every cop, we've failed as well. There's a certain accountability there, and that's a different story, but I have a multifaceted opinion and viewpoint on all the things that are going on in the world, and I don't stand particularly strong towards any one thing except protecting human life and dignity. And some of the things that are going on elsewhere just disgust me. I'm not a big fan of Israel. I'm not a big fan of Chinese rule or what's going on with Hong Kong right now. I don't like dictatorships. And it's really creepy to me, anybody who admires dictators. And we have some of them in our own government. So that's my video for the night. I'll talk to you next time. Thanks for listening. And thanks to everybody who's made this channel fun and worth having. I mean, there's bound to be some disagreements, but we do what we can. We just try to get along. Peace. Be well.